This is the story of Elijah, one of the greatest prophets of Israel. Imagine a time of great struggle where an entire nation turned away from God to worship Baal, a false idol, a god with no power. This is where our story begins, in ancient Israel, a land of rolling hills, dry deserts, and vibrant olive groves. It was a time when the people had forgotten their Creator and darkness filled the land. But standing against this tide of false worship was Elijah, a man of unshakable faith. The story begins with Elijah boldly appearing before King Ahab, a ruler who not only condoned but encouraged idol worship. With unwavering confidence, Elijah declared, "As surely as the Lord lives, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word." His words were like thunder in a dry land, a proclamation of God's power against the false idol Baal, who was said to control the rain and harvest. Yet Elijah knew his task wouldn't be easy. Can you imagine standing against an entire kingdom when it seemed like everyone was moving in the opposite direction? God led Elijah to a secret place beside the Kerith ravine. There, ravens brought him food every morning and evening, and he drank from a nearby brook. This was a miraculous time of provision in the midst of drought, a reminder that God takes care of his own, even in isolation and difficulty. But Elijah's trials were far from over, and when the brook eventually dried up, he could have easily doubted God's plan. Yet again, Elijah trusted in the Lord, who then directed him to the town of Zarephath. In Zarephath, Elijah encountered a widow gathering sticks to make her last meal. With famine ravaging the land, her resources were down to just a handful of flour and a little oil. Elijah asked her for water and, remarkably, for bread as well. "But I have only enough for my son and me," she replied with sorrow in her eyes. Elijah reassured her, saying, "Do not be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me, for this is what the God of Israel promises. Your jar of flour will not be used up, and your jug of oil will not run dry until the Lord sends rain." What would you do in her place? Would you give your last meal to a stranger at a time like this? Yet she obeyed. And just as Elijah had said, the supply of flour and oil never ran out. Every morning, the widow and her son discovered that God kept his promise, sustaining them for many days. This wasn't just a miracle of provision. It was a miracle of faith in action, a testament that when we trust God wholeheartedly, He provides for our needs in ways we cannot comprehend. Then came another test of faith. The widow's son fell ill and died. Her sorrow quickly turned to anger and confusion. She cried to Elijah, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" In that moment, Elijah's faith was put to the ultimate test. He took the lifeless child and carried him to the upper room where he was staying. He stretched himself over the boy 3 times and cried out to God, saying, "Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." And God heard his prayer. The boy's life was restored, and Elijah carried him back downstairs, alive and well. The widow exclaimed, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." But Elijah's journey wasn't over. It was about to ascend to an even greater test of faith. God called Elijah to confront King Ahab and the prophets of Baal in a dramatic showdown on Mount Carmel. Elijah invited everyone to witness the contest. 2 altars would be built, one for God and one for Baal. The true God would be revealed by sending fire from heaven to consume the offering. Can you picture the tension? The crowd gathered, the prophets of Baal chanting and dancing around their altar from morning until noon. They shouted, they cut themselves with swords and spears. It was chaos. But no fire came. Baal, the so-called god of storms, was silent. Then Elijah stepped forward. Calmly, he rebuilt the altar of the Lord with 12 stones, symbolizing the 12 tribes of Israel. He dug a trench around the altar and poured water over the offering, not once, not twice, but 3 times, until water filled the trench. It seemed impossible for fire to ignite. Elijah prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. Answer me, Lord, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Immediately, fire fell from heaven, consuming the offering, the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trench. The crowd fell to their faces, crying, "The Lord, He is God." This moment wasn't just about proving who the true God was. It was about calling a nation back to their Creator. The people witnessed the power of God firsthand and turned away from Baal to worship the Lord. But even after this triumph, Elijah faced challenges that tested his faith. Queen Jezebel, furious over the loss of Baal's prophets, threatened Elijah's life. Overwhelmed, Elijah fled into the wilderness. He felt defeated, sitting under a broom bush, and prayed, "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life." Can you relate to this feeling of exhaustion, even after a major victory? Yet God didn't leave Elijah in despair. An angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." Beside him were bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. God provided both physical nourishment and spiritual encouragement, reminding Elijah that his work wasn't done and that he wasn't alone. There are still 7,000 in Israel who have not bowed to Baal or kissed him, God revealed. Reinvigorated, Elijah continued his ministry, culminating in his remarkable departure from earth. Elijah did not die a natural death. Instead, he was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind, accompanied by a chariot and horses of fire. This extraordinary event underscored Elijah's unique relationship with God and the enduring impact of his faith. So, what can we learn from Elijah's life? Trust in God, even when the odds seem impossible. Be bold in the face of adversity. Elijah's story reminds us that God provides in miraculous ways when we commit ourselves fully to Him. Are you ready to take a stand like Elijah in your own life? Trust in God and watch how He works through you.